I was asked to make a video for a guide about PvP made by this person, Louise Loyar at MacJ. Sorry if I'm slaughtering your name, but it is what it is. So whatever's coming out of my mouth is attributed to this person. This is not my guide. I'm just putting it out there on his behalf and on PvP's behalf. So yeah, roll it. So how to play and win in Domination PvP. With several PvP seasons behind us, it is obvious that a lot of players do not understand how to best act to win matches. This brief guide will attempt to demonstrate a number of concepts necessary to improve the understanding of how to do that. Before you enter PvP, you should ideally be prepared by understanding how it works and by setting up your character appropriately. Entering unprepared is liable to get you killed a lot and to take actions which will waste your team's chances at winning, which is frustrating for everyone. Getting easily killed while feeling helpless about it isn't fun for you. It isn't fun for your teammates if they can't rely on you to stay alive or work towards the proper objectives. So how do you set up your character? This is something you need to think about a bit before entering PvP as well. There are a few basic things to keep in mind. Companions are not present in PvP. Bonding stones and augment companion statistics bonuses do not apply. You are playing against characters controlled by real people. This means there is no aggro mechanic. Having the toughest, most menacing tank in the world on your team will not save you from being targeted. This should be obvious, but I've seen some people still complain that their party tank is not protecting them. Ideally, you should have a good gear setup. This means maxed out artifacts, good artifact equipment, high level enchantments and insignias, and high level gear kitted out with reinforcement kits, and as many boons as possible. Not everyone can afford this to an equal extent. If you have to choose, prioritize stronger defenses and more survivability in PvP. You will always be more useful to your team alive than dead, but you should be willing to sacrifice for your team by dying a lot if necessary to procure the win. When choosing powers, gears, and boons, keep in mind that PvP generally doesn't feature nearly as many kills as you get in PvE. Thus, any effect that triggers on a kill is inherently less useful. Also, you will be fighting mobile and somewhat intelligent opponents. Powers that rely on passive responses from your targets are less likely to succeed. Ideally, you'll also use powers that inhibit the ability of your opponents to act. If they can't hit you because they're controlled, you'll live longer, and you can inflict more damage to them in the meantime. A number of insignia set bonuses have defensive or healing effects that you may also find more useful than in PvE. As you gain more experience, you can tinker with different approaches that fit you better. However, you should always keep in mind the things you need to be capable of in order to support your team to win. Now let's get into the rules of Domination. In order to understand how to play, it's important to also understand the rules of Domination. Each map has 3 nodes, numbered in-game for our convenience. Nodes start off neutral, so they are gray. When a greater number of players of one team than the team currently controlling it stands on a node, it starts changing to that team. This process takes time, so it is possible to stop or reverse it by players of the currently controlling team moving onto the node. If your team has a node, it's blue. If the other's team holds it, it's red. As long as the node belongs to your team will gain points from it. The first team to get to 1,000 points wins. Thus, the goal of a match is to retain control of more nodes than the other team for a larger part of the match. It is important to note that the team score has nothing whatsoever to do with each player's personal score, and that the player that contributes the most to winning a match isn't necessarily the one with the highest personal score. On the contrary, playing in a way that achieves the highest possible personal score may not be good for actually winning the match, because it may mean allowing the enemy team to cap and score team points in order to allow you to score personal points by recapping the node. Focus on the objectives you are achieving for your team, not your personal score. Making sure a node stays blue and giving your team points is better for the team than running away and letting the enemy take it, even if that means you losing a chance to get personal points. Making sure a node stays blue for longer by fighting to the death is often better than running away and letting the enemy take it faster. The flow of the match. This following section will focus on normal domination matches, which features a spread of 3 different maps, which is Hot Node Domination, Rivenscar Ruins, and Stardock Arena. The maps have somewhat different considerations, especially the Stardock Arena. Hot Node Domination and Rivenscar Ruins are more similar to each other in terms of overall structure. All of the maps feature 3 nodes. In Hot Now, Domination, and Rivenscar Ruins, these are arranged so as to give each team a home node and to feature one middle node, which is equally close to the starting point, which is the spawn zone, for each team. Each team has a spawn zone or a starting point. This is where all the players on the team start the game, and where they will respawn after they are killed anywhere on the map. Enemy players can't enter the spawn zone. If they somehow manage to do so anyways, they die instantly. Around these two central features, nodes and spawn points, each map has its own geography, with features that pertain to getting around and to positioning for fights. All of these have their uses, but any use of a terrain feature must also be probably considered. Far too often, many players use them the wrong way for the wrong reasons. In all cases, always keep in mind that these matches are a matter of keeping up a certain momentum. If players take too long to move around the map, do not fight on a node, or spend their time chasing kills rather than focusing on the winning objectives, it will contribute to losing the match. When considering where you are on the map and how, always keep in mind how long it takes you to go there, and what other opportunity costs your travel imposes. The more time you spend moving and not engaging enemies and being on a node, the more freedom you give the enemy team to define the map instead by capturing nodes and killing the rest of your team. An example of a classic move on Hot Now that trades travel time for a potential reward is to go for the enemy node. Moving across the bridge takes much longer than going through the middle. It also means a lower risk of you being stalked by enemy players from getting there. However, it also means that the enemy team will effectively have more players available to fight while you take the scenic route. This increases the risk of the enemy team winning the middle node. For example, subsequently, the enemy team can possibly send a player to their home node to prevent you from capping it. This means that by going directly to the enemy node, you may cause your team to lose a 4 versus 5 fight on the middle node, likely losing the node and causing someone else on your team to die, while possibly not being able to achieve your goal of capping the enemy node, or just being stuck fighting an enemy player there, who will respawn if you kill him and may be able to keep blocking you from capping by simply returning each time. A possibly even more common early game mistake is to go for the home node first. If the enemy team doesn't make the same mistake, they gain control of the middle node and effective map control. Subsequently, they gain points from the middle node while being able to keep the fight on your half of the map. They gain the option of either defending the middle node and capping their own home node, or defending the middle node and capping your home node, a more aggressive approach that usually pays off against weaker teams. Thus, the strongest general approach is for all the players on one team to go to the middle node at the start. This gives the greatest possible chance of controlling the middle and the subsequent flow of the game. The team that controls the middle can choose to either play aggressively or defensively, depending on the risk involved. The team that does not control the middle must attempt either to control both the end nodes or fight to recapture the middle node, while holding on one of the other nodes. Meanwhile, the enemy team is getting ahead in score. After the initial dispositions, teams' choices must be made depending on what has been established. Since the objective is to control 2 nodes more often than the enemy team, you must focus on achieving the following objectives. Retain control of any nodes you already have control of, and prevent enemies from capturing them. What this means is, if you are close enough and see an enemy player trying to capture a node your team holds, go there to fight them on the node, and prevent or delay them from capturing. Pay attention to what the rest of your team does. However, you do not want to outnumber the number of players when defending, because that makes it more likely you'll lose ground elsewhere. If you die while defending and no one on your team takes your place, you should return to the node to keep it blue if possible after respawning. Even a small delay can buy your team points and deny the enemy team points. Capture an enemy node. If you have fewer nodes than the enemy, this is of paramount importance, as long as your capture does not lead to the loss of another node. You may also deem that it is better to capture an enemy node than try to travel to defend a node you already have if it involves a long travel time, or it is not certain if your team has sufficient numbers to defend by the time you get there. One exception is that if your team is sufficiently ahead in score, sometimes it's better to defend a single node and make sure you keep getting points than to try to capture a new node and risk losing the node that is giving you your team points in the first place. This approach should only be attempted if the enemy is lacking more than twice as many points as your team to get to a total of 1000. Some examples of break-even points for this are 700 and 400, 750, 500, 800 and 600, and 900 and 800. Deny the enemy's ability to move around by intercepting and killing or controlling them. This is only a meaningful activity if it allows the former 2 goals to be achieved. Hanging around getting a lot of kills while never contributing to capping or holding nodes by being on a node may lead your team to losing. Also, pay attention to how the rest of your team moves. In PvP, it is rarely ideal for the entire team to stick together after the initial fight for the middle node. There are 3 nodes and 5 team members. If all 5 are on one node, the enemy can split up to control more nodes, even if they have to die a lot to do so. You'll want to keep following the general principles in mind when it comes to where you should stay and how your team should split up in general. On a blue node, that's a node that your team owns, you should never have more team members than the enemy does. As long as numbers on a node are equal, that is sufficient to prevent the enemy from taking it. Having greater numbers than the enemy on a blue node for an extended period is liable to make your team lose control of other nodes, or opportunities to take other nodes. However, on a red node, a node that the enemy owns, you should aim to have an equal or greater number of players that the enemy does. The aim is ultimately either to capture the node or to tie up an important enemy player. You should spend as little time as possible off node. The main exception is traveling to capture or defend another node or to prevent enemies from getting onto a node, if your team controls more nodes. When it comes to ranged characters fighting from up top from the pillar, the bridge, or the galley, the general rule is don't do it. The more specific rule is, you can do it if you are able to kill enemies fast enough to maintain equal or greater numbers for your team on the node anyway. Most of the time this is not the case and you should be on the node, even if you die a lot more that way. It's generally better for your team to have more bodies on the node. Team roles. One consideration to also keep in mind is what role each player has on a team. Ideally, each player should play to the strengths of their characters. The below is a general overview of ideal role, though strengths of different roles vary by the specific class and build involved. DPS. These characters are necessary for killing enemy players, either to capture or defend a node. They should probably be the most mobile characters on the team. 2. You have your healer. A healer is not suited for capturing a node on their own, as they generally lack the ability to kill enemies, unless there is a vast gear difference. Thus, they should focus on anchoring their team, helping them keep control of nodes that the team has already captured, or helping DPS players capture another node. The ideal position for a healer is the middle node, which is likely to see the most fighting, and also gives them the ability to get to other nodes to heal their teammates the quickest. 3 is the tank. These characters are best suited to defending a node that the team already holds. Either alone or along with other players, their ability to defend other players is limited due to there being no aggro mechanics, but they can use control powers instead. One thing to keep in mind for tanks especially is that they should aim not to be too passive. It doesn't help if you stay alive while your team dies and the node gets captured anyways. Players should keep in mind their ideal positions and try to play accordingly. A player with high survivability but low damage should aim to hold nodes rather than to attempt to capture. Now let's get into backcapping. This is the art of getting to the enemy node and taking control of it with the aim of disrupting the enemy. It could potentially be very rewarding, but can also be risky. Ideally, when you backcap, you should make sure to equalize numbers elsewhere simultaneously, so your team doesn't lose the middle node due to your backcapping. For example, this can be done either by going to backcap after killing a weak enemy at the middle, possibly making them come to fight you at the enemy node, or by making someone follow you from the middle, making that action more about giving your team a better chance to capture the middle node. The worst possible way to backcap is by taking the long, safe route to avoid enemies, as this produces both a maximum risk of losing a node elsewhere and gives the enemy more opportunity to respond. Against inexperienced pugs, backcapping by strong players with high survivability can be highly rewarding, as it can potentially allow both holding a node for the team and reducing enemy team players elsewhere. If you see a player on your team going to backcap, it is generally not a good idea to go help him do so in most situations, as it risks losing nodes elsewhere. The exception is if your team is behind on nodes. That player is able to keep killing or keep occupied 2 or more enemy players, but is unable to cap due to them respawning too quickly. Otherwise, it is generally a better idea to focus on taking and defending the home and middle nodes than trying to help at the enemy node. More experienced players will probably respond to backcapping by equalizing the numbers following the principles outlined previously. Rotations and positions. Sometimes you want to switch which players go where to match enemy strengths and weaknesses. This can be due to either having a build or player that matches an enemy especially well. In some cases, one class can counter the abilities of another class. To do so, players must be willing and able to communicate and act upon that. 1. Ideally, any player that backcaps should be able to both stay alive for a long time and be a deadly killer. Most of all, their job is to tie up as many enemy players as possible. 2. Any players whose position is at the middle should be able to defend it by staying alive and keeping their teams alive there too. 3. Players that rotate to help capture nodes should be able to kill enemy players very quickly. 4. Players that hold the home node should either be tanky or prepared to die a lot. If you are the runt of the litter, you are probably going to help your team the most this way, because it allows you to travel as little as possible after dying. Above all, try to be consistent. If you aren't sure what to do, it's easier for your teammates to play and make plans if you keep doing the same thing, even if it means you die a lot. So it's better than changing what you do in the middle of a game. The game is about teamwork, so changing your plan on your own without communication can be very disruptive. Stardock Arena. A number of the above thoughts do not apply to this map because it is structured differently, with the spawn zones being located in the middle of the map and the nodes distributed equally about the map. This changes travel time dynamics from spawn points and between nodes and often seems to lead to a merry-go-round style of play. However, the same general objectives and priorities still prevail. You should place priority on holding nodes when you have more nodes than the enemy, and only seek to cap if you are behind in node counts. Thus, the best approach is probably to keep your team moving along one of the 3 axes of the map, 1-2, 1-3, or 2-3, and try to control that axis rather than attempting to run all over the place. One additional tweak on this map are the potions. Stardock Arena features yellow potions on the map, which can be picked up to gain action points. Each fills up half a player's action points total over time. They are found at the edges and at the dead center of the map, where it alternates with regular healing potions. Potions. Each map has a number of in-map healing potions. These are red potions hovering above the ground and at specific positions. They allow a player to heal back up to full health over time after passing over them, and they respawn regularly. However, because of the position, picking up a potion isn't a trivial choice. Many players choose to run for the potion to stay alive, especially those with classes that have good escape mechanics, such as rogues, barbarians, and warlocks. In many cases, however, doing so comes at the expense of the rest of the team and the team's ability to hold a node. If the time it takes you to run to a potion, heal up, and get back on a node is enough to allow the enemy team to cap a node, taking a potion may not be worth your while. It may also lead to a teammate taking a death that was yours, if they get focused and killed while you are away to heal, which might not be too popular with them. Another approach that is common and has mixed success is to run away, then pick up the potion and run to another node to try to cap that. This often leads to a worse outcome for the team because it may mean losing the node that character runs from while not necessarily securing the one he runs to due to the time it takes to move. A twist on this is when a player is backcapping and then runs to the nearest node, waits for the enemy team to cap it, and then jumps back down on it to try to cap it again after the enemy leaves. This often has the effect of losing momentum at mid, as the enemy will get to outnumber the player's own team for a bit, possibly enough to take hold of mid, and still be able to return to their home node fast enough to prevent it from being captured. In many cases, the player's team would be better off if the player instead stayed and died, trying to stall as long as possible and dragging the enemy as far away from the middle as they can. They will often lead to better results on the other 2 nodes. All things depending on the circumstances, of course. In all cases, taking a healing potion should thus consider not just the character's personal health and status, but the team's position as a whole. It may be that by working too hard to stay alive, a character will hurt his team's overall prospects of victory by reducing pressure and momentum. Now, some general considerations. There are some general considerations to keep in mind. Be polite to other players. This should go without saying, but if you get your kick from humiliating lower geared or worse players, you're not a nice person and probably have issues. 2. Try to cooperate with the rest of your team as best you can. 3. Avoid using broken items and features. Bugs and bad design happen. The game has periodically produced a number of things that ruin the PvP experience for everyone. In particular, these have included items that allow everyone to be invisible, items that allow players to be immortal, items that generate excessive amounts of crowd control, and drain overloads that disable essential defensive mechanics. Items such as these destroy the fun for everyone involved, or impose unnecessary costs, except for the people using them, of course. 4. If you're brand new, expect to take some time to get used to things. If you put in some effort to learn, adjust your build and get better, you'll be enjoying yourself much more very soon. So there you have it, folks. A guide on how to properly play PvP by Louise Loyar at MacJ. I hope I didn't butcher your name, but if I did, tough titties. I don't know how else to say your name. So yep, I was asked to do this for the PvP community, and it was my pleasure to do so. If you have any more PvP subjects or topics you want me to make videos for, feel free to reach out to me through Marigolds or Lancer. Anyways, my tongue is really tired. I need to stop. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. You should give PvP a shot. Sometimes PvP can be fun. Anyways, Galactic here. Peace out. Stay safe.